Human Life and Problems by Venerable Dr. K.C. Dhammananda. What Buddhism requires of man. What does Buddhism require of man? A Chinese scholar once asked a monk what constituted the essence of Buddhism, and the sage replied, "To do good, not to do evil, to purify the mind. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas." Naturally, the scholar had expected a much more profound answer, something deep and abstruse, and he remarked that even a child of 3 could understand that. But the sage replied that while a child of 3 could understand it, a man of 80 could not practice it. The Buddha had similarly cautioned his attendant disciple, Ananda, not to regard seemingly simple teachings as something easy to follow. This is the essence of Buddhism. Man is required to follow startlingly simple precepts in his search for emancipation. But the practice of these can be extremely difficult. To begin with, he must not take the life of any living creature knowingly. He must not take anything not given. He must refrain from lying and harsh, frivolous speech. He must guard against sexual misdemeanor. He must not take anything, like drugs and liquor, which causes him to lose his mindfulness. These are important Buddhist principles to observe. These principles are not meant for expression, but to be simply put into practice with understanding. The central problem of the spiritual life is one of active, practical application, not a matter of intellectual knowledge. The ultimate aim of man in Buddhism is to break finally and irrevocably the bonds that bind him to constant rebirth in the repeated birth and death cycle of samsara. He is destined to be subjected to an endless round of rebirths because in his ignorance, man conceives of an enduring entity called an ego or self. Taking the illusion of an ego for real, he develops selfish desires. Man is thus endlessly struggling to satisfy his cravings, but he is never satisfied. It is like scratching a sore to find temporary relief, only to discover that in doing so the itch has increased because the sore has been aggravated. The institution of marriage. Marriage is a partnership in which 2 individuals of opposite sexes but equal worth as human beings choose to live together. A happy and lasting marriage requires a lot of hard work and commitment, where love is fed with shared experiences, joys, and sorrows. Marriage is the culmination of love by 2 individuals committed to one another by a common bond. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach. Robert Browning. We believe, as Browning does, that love is the essence of life itself, something which transcends boundaries, race, and creed. Marriage has failed to fulfill its purposes today because people have failed to recognize the importance of equality and respect for women. These privileges are enjoyed by many women in a large number of areas of human activity. Strangely, when it comes to marriage, women are still treated badly. The importance of the role of women in society was undoubtedly widened after the advent of Buddhism in India, giving them a wide scope to venture into vocations besides housekeeping. In spite of this, for the vast majority, to get married and rear children remained the normal choice of career. But there was a difference. Married life was ennobled by the noble position given to it by the Buddha himself to such an undertaking. He lifted the married woman from a state of servant to a state of responsibility and importance. As an indication of the Buddha's concern for maintenance of happiness through marriage, he laid down specific instructions for the guidance of husband and wife. The Buddha was full of praise for happy couples. Among his late disciples were Nakulamata and Nakulapita, who were considered most eminent for having lived together amicably for a long time. The Buddha praised them and gave instructions to others as to how they too could live happily in marriage. These instructions, given over 2,500 years ago, hold good even to this day. Much misery has been experienced in modern times by men and women in married life because they deviated from these instructions. The institution of marriage in ancient India was governed by the concept of caste, the position of woman, the rights of men, and the 4 stages of the individual's life. The Buddha's rejection of the concept of the caste system meant that the Buddha's institution of marriage was emancipated from these rigid and inflexible rules, regulations, and rituals, which had become a great obstacle to the free and unprejudiced behavior of the members of society, both male and female. The discourse on fundamentals of Buddhist social ethics, Sigalovada Sutta, generally lays down the basic pattern of relationships between husband and wife, parents and children, and enumerates the reciprocal duties that bind them together, emphasizing the most essential aspects of their common life. The comprehensive study of the Buddha's institution of marriage outlined in the Buddha's teaching clearly shows that was intended for the enjoyment, promotion, and moralization of biological needs, psychological satisfaction, and material well-being of both husband and wife, without any reference to specific customs, sacraments, or any kind of ideology, religious or otherwise. According to the Buddha, cultural compatibility between husband and wife was considered as one of the factors of a successful married life. Many of today's problems in marriage arise from the inability of the parties concerned to recognize the sacrifices involved. Marriage is not simply lust and romance. Romance is not a bad thing in itself, but it is emotional and has limitations. There will be less disillusion and heartache in marriage if we understand that from the illusions of romance, a deep and abiding love may emerge. Love is a passionate and abiding desire on the part of 2 people to produce together conditions under which each can express his or her real self, and to produce together an intellectual soil and an emotional climate in which each can flourish, far superior to what either could achieve alone. In the past, we heard of blissfully married couples who shared the sweetness of love earned through years of being together, for better or for worse. For most who have been long married couples, happily ever after did not just happen. Couples in long, happy marriages mentioned this fact of life when asked what made their relationships a success. We worked to keep the romance alive. We enjoyed our differences and learned from them. We voiced our discontents freely and dealt with them right away, instead of letting them build into thunderclouds. But in a way, the thing all successful couples have in common was reflected in this observation. Even when things were really bad, we were both too stubborn to quit. Perhaps what characterizes modern couples with problems is that they want things to work out too easily, as it happens on television. No, everything good must be earned through hard work. For many, the road to marital longevity has not been smooth. The bumps included many things: inability to have children, the death of a child, a disabled child, a difficult economic crisis, and highly stressful career changes. Although none of the couples surveyed said so specifically, it was obvious that two other factors were important to their marital success. Firstly, even though some couples faced considerable differences in personality and sometimes carried heavy emotional baggage, they maintained respect for one another always, and refrained from trying to remake their partners. A wife once told her husband, "You married me for what I am." He retorted, "No, I married you for what you would become." Now, of course, both parties were wrong because their expectations were different and they were unwilling to compromise. Secondly, none of the marriages was married by psychological disturbances too severe to preclude a true relationship. There was a wife who always used to insult her husband, even for a minor mistake, stating, "You are a stupid man." The husband, on the other hand, was a very tolerant man. However, one day, when he was scolded by the wife, using the same word, the husband retorted, "I think you are right. If I were not a stupid man, do you think that I would ever marry a woman like you?" From that day onwards, she did not repeat that insulting word. To achieve a successful marriage, couples also need to understand and accept the differences between the two genders. Couples sometimes become frustrated with each other and wish that their partner was more like them. Knowing and being able to tolerate the differences between men and women helps a lot in marriage. A mate who is willing to weather the hard times and make the adjustments that come with children, job changes, financial difficulties, or simply learning more about the person one is married to is the real secret to a successful marriage. Another saying on married life: wife becomes a mistress to a young man, a companion to the middle-aged, and a nurse to an old man. Many couples with children are determined to stay together at least until their children are grown up. With just a little effort, these years can be among the most fulfilling times in a marriage. Marriage is a blessing, but many people turn their married lives into misery and a curse. Poverty is not the main cause of an unhappy married life. Both husband and wife must learn to share the pleasure and pain of everything in their daily lives. Mutual understanding is the secret of a happy family life. In a true marriage, man and woman think more of the partnership than they do of themselves individually. Marriage is a bicycle made for two. A feeling of security and contentment comes from mutual efforts. A wife is not her husband's servant. She deserves respect as an equal, though a man is generally regarded even today as being the breadwinner. Helping out with household chores do not demean his masculinity. At the same time, a nagging and grumpy wife is not going to make up for shortages in the home. Neither will her suspicion of her husband help to make a happy marriage. If her husband has shortcomings, only tolerance and kind words will get him to see light. It is important in marriage to keep tolerance alive throughout. Little things can mean a lot. Right understanding and moral conduct are the practical sides of wisdom. From time immemorial, flowers have been considered the language of love. They don't cost much. Wives, or for that matter, all women, attach a lot of importance to birthdays and anniversaries. And caring husbands should never be too busy to keep love alive with little tributes and attentions. Trivialities such as these are at the bottom of the most marital happiness. Wives do appreciate such little attentions from their courteous husbands, and it is this lifelong goodwill that keeps the home fires burning. A carefully developed family affection is a simple formula that works both for keeping marriages together and bringing up children of good character. True love means being willing to value one's partner and being unwilling to devalue him or her in the presence of other people. This willingness has to spring from the heart. The key difference between marriages that work and those that do not is how much a couple value each other. Criticizing, putting down, or belittling a spouse, particularly in the presence of other people, erodes a relationship. And even this is not enough, as each still has to value the other as if he or she is a rare gem. Sometimes words are not necessary if there is understanding. An elderly father once confessed to his children that he loved their mother very much and told them to take care of her always, even after he was no more. He confided to them that she was the best woman in the world and that the family was indeed lucky to have her around. The wife, now in her 60s, has 7 grown children and has many grandchildren. Yet she confessed that she never once heard the endearing words, "I love you," ever uttered or whispered to her, not even a variation of it. The wife, who belongs to the old school of Chinese philosophy, is quite content with her husband's own caring ways and concern for her happiness in their blissful married life. Her female intuition somehow tells her that deep down in his heart he truly loves her and that she could not have been dealt a better deck of cards. It is in the nature of some people not to speak out their feelings, but they care. We have to watch out for their actions. The next key to a harmonious marriage is to work towards achieving one's objective. It is a law of nature that if no effort is put into, for instance, a garden, weeds will grow instead of beautiful flowers. The same goes for marriage. Faith, not necessarily in the religious sense, though it helps tremendously if a couple shares similar religious beliefs, is another vital ingredient in a lasting relationship. How important is sex in a marriage? Sex is a natural instinct, and if enjoyed within its proper boundaries, can bring about great happiness. Sex helps to keep a marriage glowing and is an important and vital area that keeps a marriage together. It creates intimacy, a shared experience between two people which no one else is party to. It makes the relationship precious and private. The important thing to appreciate here is the fact that men and women see sex differently. While men may view sex as an intense physical activity, women do not. For her, it involves an interaction with the man she loves, that is, with his gentleness, his care and concern. Understanding the fact that women need intimacy and closeness makes the sexual activity a lot more meaningful and fulfilling. Sex is much more than the gratification of an appetite. It is the basis of an intimate, lifelong companionship, and the means of bringing into the world children whom we love and cherish as long as we live. Through the ages, we have learned that love and mutual respect must be the basis of close intimacy between the sexes. Sex, like any other tendency in man, must be regulated by reason. Man, not being governed by instincts like lesser animals, would find his tendencies running wild were he not to regulate them with reason. There is a saying, like fire, sex is a good servant, but a bad master. A society grows through a network of relationships, which are mutually intertwined and interdependent. Every relationship is a wholehearted commitment to support and to protect others in a group or community. Marriage plays a very important part in this strong web of relationships of giving support and protection. A good marriage should grow and develop gradually from understanding and not impulse, from true loyalty and not just sheer indulgence. The institution of marriage provides a fine basis for the development of culture, a delightful association of two individuals to be nurtured and to be free from loneliness, deprivation, and fear. In marriage, each partner develops a complementary role, giving strength and moral courage to each other, with each manifesting a supportive and appreciative recognition to the other's skills. There must be no thought of man or woman being superior. Each is complementary to the other, a partnership of equality, exuding gentleness, generosity, calm, and dedication, and most important of all, self-sacrifice. The Buddha's advice to a couple, the wife. In advising women about their role in married life, the Buddha appreciated the fact that peace and harmony of a home rested largely on a woman. His advice was realistic and practical when he explained a number of day-to-day characteristics which a woman should or should not cultivate. On diverse occasions, the Buddha counseled that a wife should not harbor evil thoughts against her husband, not be cruel, harsh, or domineering, not be spendthrift, but should be economical and live within her means, guard and save her husband's hard-earned earnings and property, always be attentive and chaste in mind and action, be faithful and harbor no thoughts of any adulterous acts, be refined in speech and polite in action, be kind, industrious, and hardworking, be thoughtful and compassionate towards her husband, be modest and respectful, be cool, calm, and understanding, serving not only as a wife but also as a friend and advisor when the need arises. According to Buddhist teaching, in a marriage, the husband can expect the following qualities from his wife. Love. A deep and abiding love is the most emotional and spontaneous expression of desire and self-fulfillment a husband expects from his wife. It is indeed the basis of an intimate, lifelong mutual relationship and the means of bringing into the world children whom they will love and cherish as long as they live. Here, love is not limited to mere attachment, prema, but it is an all-pervading quality of wishing for the genuine well-being of her husband. Attentiveness. To be ever heedful, mindful, and diligent, as well as to give her undivided attention to her husband's needs. Family obligations. Besides fulfilling the duties and responsibilities of the couple's own family, the wife should also honor and respect her in-laws and deserving relatives and treat them as she would her own parents. Faithfulness is associated with chastity, fidelity, and steadfastness of the wife. It also implies being trustworthy and giving her constant devotion to her husband. Child care. Motherly love is the foundation of all love in the world. As a devoted mother, she would, through her maternal instincts, even venture out at the risk of her life for the protection of her only child. Thrift. As the wife is entrusted with the task of home management, it is incumbent on her to see that household expenditure is kept well within the family budget provided by the husband. To accomplish this task, the wife has to economize on her expenditure and exercise thrift, even to the extent of being frugal in doing so. The provision of meals. As the mistress of the house, it is the duty of the wife to prepare good, nourishing food for the family. The family meal is an important event each day as it develops goodwill and togetherness. To calm him down when he is upset. When the husband returns home in an agitated state, the wife has to express herself in a soothing manner so as to pacify and comfort him. This will ease the satiety. Sweetness in everything. Besides expressing her endearing and tender feelings, the wife should also possess a charming disposition, be always cheerful, pleasant, and comely. The husband. The Buddha, in reply to a householder as to how a husband should minister to his wife, declared that the husband should always honor and respect his wife by being faithful to her, by giving her the requisite authority to manage domestic affairs, and by giving her befitting ornaments. This advice, given over 25 centuries ago, still stands good till today. Over the centuries, male-dominated societies have perpetuated the myth that men are superior to women, but the Buddha made a remarkable change and uplifted the status of woman by a simple suggestion that a husband should honor and respect his wife. Such a remark may be common today, but when we consider it was made in India 2,500 years ago, it is no less than revolutionary. A husband should be faithful to his wife, which means that a husband should fulfill and maintain his marital obligations to his wife, thus sustaining the confidence in the marital relationship in every sense of the word. The husband, being the breadwinner, has to invariably be away from home. Hence, he should entrust the domestic or household duties to the wife, who should be considered as the custodian and manager of their property, and as the home economic administrator. The provision of befitting ornaments to the wife should be symbolic, as the husband's love, care, and appreciation showered on her. This symbolic practice has been carried out from time immemorial in Buddhist communities. Unfortunately, today it is in danger of dying out because of the adverse influence of the modern way of life. The wife's expectations from the husband are tenderness, being gentle and respectful to the wife on all matters when attending to her needs; courtesy, being polite, obliging, civil, and modest in his dealings and consultations with his wife; sociability, being genial, friendly, communicative, and compatible at all times with his wife in the company of their friends and visitors to their home. Security. The principal objective a wife seeks in her marriage is security to be provided by her husband. In this respect, the husband is expected to be a tower of strength so as to withstand any form of external threat to the family and to provide them with adequate protection and safety at all times. Fairness. As a responsible husband, he should be forgiving, compassionate, and merciful, as well as being charitable to deserving causes needing his assistance. As a father, he has to be just and reasonable to the demands of his growing children. Loyalty. As an understanding husband, he should give his undivided loyalty to his wife and stand by her, through thick and thin, under any adverse situation confronting the family. He should be steadfast in his principles and one whom the wife could, with complete confidence, depend upon in facing any untoward eventuality. Honesty. Being a responsible husband, he has to be upright in his character and be frank with his wife on all matters affecting themselves and their children. He should not harbor any secrets from his wife, as this will ultimately erode her trust and confidence in him. Good companionship. The husband should possess an amiable personality and be able to mix with people from all walks of life. He should be knowledgeable so as to be able to engage in intelligent conversation at all levels of society, and be approachable to anyone needing his assistance. He also should possess a good sense of humor to enliven his listeners who seek his companionship, and moral support. As a responsible husband, he should be able to stand steadfastly by his wife's side to the very end, in the face of any untoward eventuality confronting her, and lend her moral support and much needed courage to overcome such a situation. Husband and wife. The husband is the acknowledged head of the family, unless he is incapacitated from performing his duties as such. Both in common law and under modern legislation, the husband is legally bound to support his wife and family, notwithstanding the fact that the wife has her own property or income or is capable of earning her own support. Even today, where many wives work, the nurturing of a family should be a shared experience. Husbands have no reason to shirk household duties, to help the wife and train the children, especially when there are no servants to do such work. Apart from these emotional and sensual aspects, the couple will have to take care of day-to-day living conditions, family budget, and social obligations. Thus, mutual consultations between the husband and wife on all family problems would help to create an atmosphere of trust and understanding in resolving whatever issues that may arise.